on Awesome God Radio. I am your host, Whitney J. Happy Friday, everybody. I am just so excited today. If you are tuning in on the Awesome God Radio app, thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. If you have not downloaded the free Awesome God Radio app, listen, you are missing out. Amazing music, amazing shows. You need to tune in. Hit that download. Download the Awesome God Radio app. I'm telling you, you will be blessed every time. If you are tuning in on Facebook or on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in. Listen, hit the like button, leave me a comment, share it to your page. Listen, I am beside myself for so many reasons. One of those reasons is my favorite author is here. Kimberla, Lawson, Roby. I have been reading her books for a long time, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I am just so honored that she is here and she is going to be tuning in with us. So I am just blessed, and I am just so thankful to her. But I want to talk to you about something a little different. So I want to talk to you about humility. So for the She Heals Inspiration segment, we are going to dive in and we're going to talk about humility. And I am going to be super transparent. And I'm just going to ask that, Lord, just be with me and be glorified. So, we are in a very unique season, right? And there are so many things going on. And of course, we know all about COVID-19, right? So we don't even have to spend our time really focusing on that, because I feel like every day we are talking about, it's kind of all consuming, right? Because it is impacting the entire world. You are affected in some way, and some people, are affected in other ways than not. So some of us are merely inconvenienced, right? Maybe we're not working in our office. Some of us have been impacted by this disease. We've suffered it. We've known someone that has suffered it. Some of us have lost people. So there's a lot there, but that's not what I want to talk about today. Many of us were already in a personal pandemic or epidemic before COVID-19. Many of us were already going through a lot of different circumstances way before this pandemic started. I'm one of those people. Last year and this year have been very challenging for lots of reasons. I have had multiple family losses. I have dealt with depression and anxiety, financial storms, all kinds of things. And it's been quite a season. That was even before the pandemic, right? I was going through and dealing with a lot before the pandemic. So for a lot of us, the pandemic is one of many major life things that we're going through. And I want to encourage you today that if that is your story, if you're like me that had already been going through a lot and then this pandemic hits you, you may even feel like right now, like, God, I can't take any more. Well, let me just encourage you right now that God is a promise keeper. I know that it looks crazy right now, and I know that it seems like things are not going to work out, but he's a promise keeper. But he does require us to search within. Sometimes the storm is not to hurt us, but it is to expose some areas of our lives that we need to make some changes. It's really to clear our path for wherever God is taking us next. And that's where the humility comes in. That's where being humble comes in. We have to humble ourselves before God. And a lot of us are in a season of humbling, right? If you are the person that, lives by being the best dressed out there, hair done, face beat. That's what you live by, right? Right now, not having access to those things or limited access to those things is humbling, right? I'm looking at my hair right now. My hair hasn't been washed in like 4 weeks. I need to do it. And, I tried to do my own eyebrows with a razor. And, I tried to put a little makeup on my face. You're trying to do that. But it's humbling when you don't have access to those things. If you are a person that is an extreme extrovert and you are the life of the party and you are the it person, you know all the hot spots and all of those things. Not having access to those things in this season is very humbling, right? But take heart because God has a plan. God has a plan. And so, over the I've been in this a particular storm for, oh my goodness, it feels like forever. And I'll share a little bit about it because I want to get the point of humility. So as you are listening, I just want you to hear humility. Last year, God told me to move, sell your house and move. And actually the year before last, he told me that. And I said, absolutely not. I worked really hard to establish, stability after my husband died and I had my children. I had moved around a lot as a kid. I am not moving. We are here. We are settled. I'm a homeowner. I have security. I'm not moving. That was 2018. But it kept coming at me. 2019, move. God, I don't want to move. And he kept pushing me though. And sometimes he is relentless in his pursuit of us. When there is something that he wants us to do, he will continue to pursue it. We'll continue to see signs and confirmation of that thing we're supposed to be doing. And so finally, middle of the year, I said, yes, God, I give you my yes. So the way things were set up, I was going to sell my house, I was going to buy another house, and I was going to have some money left over. That is not what happened. I went through a series of ordeals, just the process and getting a house ready to be to sell. That's a whole other thing, right? Getting the house ready to be sold, then getting a buyer, then meeting the demands of the buyer, and then hoping that works out. And I went through storm after storm, and this was months, thousands of dollars spent, right? More than what I needed. But I kept saying, God told me to move. I know he told me to move. So even though it is complete chaos around me, even though it is so uncomfortable, I know that he told me to move. So I'm not going to even get into all the details because this is way too much. And to be honest, I don't even want to relive some of it. I finally get my house sold after a devastating blow. My finances shattered, all the money and plans that I had shattered. Finally sell my house, and I don't make any money. I was supposed to make money. I don't make any money. Now I'm renting the house that I had already moved into. That's another story. So now I'm in the process of buying a house again. And I'm like, God, why did you allow this to happen? God, I was already a homeowner. This is a step backwards. Why would you tell me to move for me to go to being a homeowner, then going back to being a renter? And then I was supposed to sell my house, buy another house, have money left over to save. I had plans with that money. I was going to do some ministry things, some projects. Like, God, what is this? And God kept telling me, humility. I need you to be humble. I am moving some things around so you can see some things. And he started showing me some things. Here is the area of your life I want to clean up. Your stability is not in your home ownership or in your job and your salary. Your stability is in me and me alone. So one, I needed to redirect your thinking. Because you were idolizing your stability that one I provided, but you were putting that in front of me. So I had to reposition you. Then on top of that, I had to show you how to stay with me when I give you an assignment. Some of us, most of us, lots of us, we get on assignment with God and, we're like, yeah, God told me to start a ministry. This is great. And the moment stuff gets thick, the moment we get a little opposition, the moment things don't go according to plan, we are ready to check out and we're done. We're like, no. And God kept saying, I told you to move. And so even when the stability of my children was coming to place, my finances, I was looking like, God, I'm giving up a sure thing. I owned my home. I loved my own. What is going to happen? So he's like, humility, stay with me. When God gives you an assignment, stay with him. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what opposition you may face. Stay with him. God knew when he gave you the assignment that the pandemic was going to hit. He knew that, right? He's not caught by surprise. So he knew ahead of time every obstacle that you were going to face in pursuit of fulfilling the assignment that he gave to you. So don't start blowing with the wind and, oh, things are good, so I'm with it. Oh, things are hard, so I'm checking out. Stay the course and learn the lessons and stay humble. So I'm in this situation now and I'm okay. Renting the house, they're like, hey, you need to rent the house for a certain amount of time. Cool, I'm here. Then my finances explode. So then God starts revealing to me, I need to be a better steward of my finances. You know, sometimes we tend to justify the things that we do. And if you're anything like me, you might say things to yourself like, well, at least I don't do that. So I would say things like, I don't spend frivolously. I don't go to the malls. I don't go shopping, right? I don't do those things, but I do eat out a lot. That makes me no better than the person that shops outside of their budget, right? So we try to justify it and say, oh, well, at least I don't do this. Well, God was showing me, okay, but you need to fine tune your spending. You need to I need to humble you. You need to go and look at your debt and look at what you're bringing in and how can you be a better steward? Sure, I pay my tithes, but that's not it. Some people think as long as you pay your tithe, you can do whatever you want to do after that. No, you have to be disciplined totally. And so God is saying to me, okay, well, I need you to check this, and this. And I'm like, well, Lord, you know, I got to buy this house. Da, 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 da. He's like, but check it and get this area together. Then we shut down. Even in the midst of a pandemic, God provides. And I am fortunate that I've been able to really be humble. And God is showing me, this is what I need you to do. And that's what I need you to do. And so I really started doing that. I even took an online webinar on finances. And I reached out to someone that was helping me with budgeting. And I paid off debt. I took that money that I was going to Outback with and I was going to other places. And I started looking at, well, let me pay this off and let me get that together. Let me get this together because I need to buy this house. Right? I'm in this situation now. I need to buy this house. And so God was humbling me, but it was hard because I was afraid. I was afraid of how is it going to work out? Is God going to make a way? What if I have to move again? What if, my kids are settled and this was a really big deal for us to move and we're here now, we're settled. And I was driving myself crazy. And shout out to my friends and my family and my prayer partners, because I'm sure I was driving them crazy too. Like, I'm losing it. Please pray for me. And they kept saying, stay the course. And I kept saying to myself, I know God told me to move. Then the pandemic hits, and guess what? The market is different. It's different. There's different protocol to get a home loan now. So whereas I was prepared before, it looked like I was not prepared now based on these current circumstances. But let me explain to you that when you are prepared by God, earthly circumstances don't matter. Earthly qualifications don't matter. When God has said, this is what I have for you. So I was looking and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get the home loan that I need. And even last week, I was going back and forth and I'm like, God, help me with this. And, finally I get pre-approved and I need to put down way more than what I had planned and budgeted for. And so I was fasting last week. Listen, y'all, I was on a 16-hour fast, no food, no water, prayer, and the word of God. That was it for like 5 or 6 days. I'm fasting and praying. I set my, prayer closet up. I've got the sticky notes all over the wall and my closet. I got the whole thing, right? I was talking to the lender every day, checking my credit every day, doing all of these things, right? And so my plan was, I'm just going to fast until it's done. How many of you have been that desperate for God to make a move that you are just like, I'm going to fast until it's done, right? And so that's what I was doing. I'm like, I am in it to win it. I'm going to stay until it's over. And Sunday morning, I got up that same fire. I was getting ready to watch church online, and I prayed, and God said, you have done everything in your power except trust me. You have done all the things the lender told you to do. You've paid all the things you've needed to pay. You have done everything except for be still and know that I am God. There are times when God wants you to run, right? Think about that race. There are times that he needs you to go full force. You got to make a move. You got to run. You got to get it done. And then there are times that he has you to wait. And in that waiting, you are trusting him. And that is your position. That is your position. So it is just like running a relay race. Every person that is in the relay is in position even when they're not running. That's a word for somebody. Nobody in a relay race or on a relay team is just standing around. They are all in position, even when they're not the one running. The fourth person in the relay that runs to the finish line is in position when the first person starts running. So you have to stay in position, but you have to know what your position is. And so God had to tell me, yeah, I had you in a season of doing things. Now I need you to sit down somewhere and stop thinking that you got to do it for me. Now I need you to actually activate your faith. And know that what my word says, that I'm a defender of the widowed and the fatherless. Now I'm going to need you to know the word that says I will supply all your needs. And that whatever I have, you've asked of me, you will give to me. I need you to know the word, Whitney. So I need you to sit down. Sometimes we think we got to do all this work, and that's like making God move. And a lot of times he's like, I'm just waiting for you to get out the way. See, you're running and it's not your turn yet. So I had to sit down. So Sunday, I stopped fasting. And I'm going to be honest, it was uncomfortable. I was like, God, I just want to do something. And maybe I need to just move. And maybe I need, because it was so uncomfortable. And I couldn't see a plan. I'm looking at what they said I needed, the money and all those things that I didn't see a way. And so I was itching to fix it instead of staying in my position and waiting. And so I was just all this week. I mean, when I tell you having panic attacks, hadn't had a panic attack in a while, heart palpitations, couldn't sleep at night, headaches, just a mess. And finally, I was talking to a friend and I was just like, I can't keep doing this. This is too much. And I got to trust him. And I really let go. And I'm talking about when you let go in your heart. When you say, you know what, God, your will. If it works out the way I want it to work out, great. If it doesn't work out the way I want it to work out, you know what? That's great too, because your plan is beautiful, even when it doesn't always look or feel that way. And I had to just trust. Lo and behold, yesterday, get a call. I'm pre-approved for the exact amount of money that I had to take care of what I needed to take care of. It's going to work out. And it's crazy because I was actually like, I'm going to wait until after I closed on the house to tell this story. But I feel God saying, but do you really trust me? You can tell it now. So even now, things shifted and those man-made circumstances did not apply to me because God had promised me that he was going to take care of me. But I had to be in position. So guess what? I can thank God even right now for the way that he made me. I can thank God for the unexpected blessings that I don't even know are coming yet, that are coming this way because of my obedience. You know, Pastor Whipple, if you don't know him, he's an amazing man of God. He posted something this week about I think he said it was something to the effect of your work is not what's going to move God, your obedience is what moves him. And I was just like, man, that's a word. Be obedient to what God said. I know stuff looks absolutely crazy. I know it does. And I know sometimes it's hard to look and see, God, how are you fitting in with this? How is this working? You're telling me that I'm going to be debt free, but I'm $1 million in debt. So how does that look? God, you're telling me that you have a husband for me or a wife for someone. You're telling me that this is my season, but it's a pandemic and everybody's at home. You're telling me that you've called me to have children, but every pregnancy test is negative. It is so hard to see God in those times where it just looks like it's impossible. But what my encouragement to you today is to humble yourself. Humble is not being meek. Humble is a position of surrender. Humble says, you know what? I don't know, but I know you, God, and you know. Humble says, I don't have the resources, but I serve a God that is all knowing and all powerful. Humble says, you know, there are some things that I need to get right in my life in order to receive the blessing that God has for me. So, you know what? I'm going to use the time while I'm waiting to clean some things up. I'm going to use the time to seek God of God. How can I be a better steward of what you have for me? God, how can I be in the best shape to be prepared for what you have for me? God, if you're calling me to be a millionaire, I have to know how to manage $10 first. So humble says, you know what? I don't know it all, and I'm willing to learn, God. Your servant is listening. Speak. That is what humble is. It is a position of expectation, right? It's a position of expectation, but it's also a position of preparation. So in order to be humble and to receive what God has for you, you've got to be prepared and you have to expect it. Get prepared. If God is calling you to do something, start asking God to show you who you can reach out to. Where's the resources for that? God's not going to call you to do something and there's absolutely no one you can lean on. He always sends community. So guess what? If God's calling you to write the book, reach out to someone that has written a book and ask questions. If God is calling you to sing, reach out to someone and ask God to lead you to who those people are. But what I'm saying is learn. If you're supposed to start a business, ask God to show you who's my mentor in this. Who's going to help me get this? Because I don't know all the answers. I can tell you now, in the last 2 months, since we have been shut down and I've been working from home and have been home, I have received more revelation and more correction from God than I probably have in my entire life. I have learned so much. It has been very humbling to look at yourself and say, okay, Whitney, this is an area of your life that you need to repent. You need to ask God's forgiveness for being disobedient in this area, and you need, or undisciplined in this area, and you need to get that together. It's not about condemnation; it's about correction. Because guess what? I know God is taking me somewhere, and I want to be prepared. I don't want the opportunity to present itself to come to me, and I'm not prepared for it. Right? I don't want to miss the connection. I don't want to miss the protection. I don't want to miss the assignment because I'm out of order and I'm not prepared. But then the flip side of that is I need to expect it. Some of us are so used to the worst case scenario happening. We're so used to loss and trauma and hurt and pain that we can't even expect a yes from God. If I can be honest, I'm like that sometimes. The first thing that I tend to do when given an opportunity, good or bad, is I imagine what the worst case scenario is and I create a plan for that. Because if I can work out the worst case scenario, I'm going to be okay. Instead of having an expectation that my God is more than enough and that my God doesn't want me to live the worst case scenario. My God has the best plan. His word says his plan is to keep us and not to harm us, to give us a hope and a future. So I don't need to always be prepared for the worst case scenario. I need to trust God, align myself to his will, and be humble. Expect great things to happen. Be prepared for great things to happen. But also be humble. Be humble. Listen, I did some financial counseling. This was maybe last month. And with this particular counselor I was working with, she had me submit my bank statements to her. And we went through them. transaction by transaction. You want to talk about humble? When somebody else that doesn't know you, it's like, okay, so you spent this amount of money on food. You spent this amount of money at Amazon for whatever reason. You spent this amount of money on your bills. You spent here, you spent there. It was humbling to have to be accountable and to be able to talk about my spending. It was an experience I'll never forget because it helped me grow. It gave me a new perspective. It shined a light on an area that needed improvement. And God doesn't do that for us to feel bad. He does it so that he can position us and prepare us for what he has next. Listen, who knows what God has next? But I can tell you this, I'm already in prep mode. I'm already looking at being a better steward of my time because I'm working from home now and sometimes the day runs together and I have to be intentional about my time and making sure my kids get their stuff done. I get my stuff done. We rest, we connect with people. So I have to be intentional as well. So it's showing me all of these things for whatever God has next. I don't know what's coming, but I know that as I'm connected to him, it's a beautiful plan. So I have to get ready. That means I have to be humble. Listen, if you cannot be corrected, you are positioning yourself to be stagnant. If you cannot be correct, if no one can, now I ain't saying everybody should correct you. God will show you who you're connected with to hold you accountable and to provide correction for you. But what I'm saying is, if you cannot be corrected, your position is being stagnant because the correction is needed to go to the next level. If, when our kids are learning how to walk, if we don't correct their posture when they're learning how to stand up on their own, and if we don't correct their movement, then guess what's going to happen? They're not going to learn how to walk properly. And they're going to end up hurting and injuring themselves because they're not walking properly. That is what God is doing. He's trying to get us to walk according to his will. He cannot do that if our posture is all over the place. So we've got to be willing to be positioned. And there are people that can recognize the need that we have because they used to be in that position. And so that is also for us that once God starts moving and shaking things and we start growing and getting better, you need to recognize that lag in somebody else and come and get them. You got to go and get them and say, hey, listen, I see this. And hey, I'm not trying to judge you. I'm not coming to condemn you. And I'm certainly not coming in a position that I'm better than you. But hey, let me tell you, I used to have this. And let me tell you what worked for me. Let me tell you how God helped me in this area. So you got to be willing to share too. And that's all in humility. We are trying as believers to be the person that God called us to be. We're trying to be the best version of ourselves. We cannot do that if we are not willing to grow, and we cannot do that if we are not willing to be humble and to do the work. So you got to stay in position. You got to be humble. You have to prepare, and God will show you. You know what the work is. Don't say, I don't know how to prepare. That thing that's in the back of your mind that you keep pushing to the side, the Holy Spirit keeps showing it to you. That's it. That's what you should be doing. Those people that God keeps aligning you, and you're like, why does this person keep reaching out to me? Because I don't want to talk to them because they're going to hold me accountable. That's your resource right there. So get prepared. Stay humble. Stay coachable and trainable. Don't think you know it all. Put your arrogance and your ego, all of that stuff to the side. Be willing to listen. And then be in expectation. Expect God to do what he said. Expect miracles. Expect breakthroughs. Expect healing. Expect transformation. Expect deliverance. And I promise you, you will have it. Stay in position because when it's your time to run, you need to run it out the park. We got this, y'all. As we are transitioning, I pray that the She Heals Inspiration segment was a blessing to you. As we are now transitioning, I am so excited. This is the power of connection. Sometimes you got to take a chance. God will call you to take a risk. And I am so glad that I took a risk. I slid into Kimberla Lawson Roby's private message, and I just said, you know what? I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to just reach out and just tell her how much I love her books. And maybe she'll come on the show and look at what God has done. I want to formally welcome to the She Heals Radio Show. She is a best-selling author. She's an amazing woman of God. She is Kimberla Lawson Roby.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am great. It is an honor to be here with you. I am so excited. You are my favorite author, so forgive me. I'm just beside myself. Thank you for even responding. I mean, I thank you for responding and thank you for coming. How are you today?
I am fine. How are you?
I am doing well. So I told you I was going to share something with you on the air, and I'm really excited about it. And it's interesting because I was a little emotional about it this morning. So in my family, I am blessed to come from a family of readers.
Mm-hmm.
So we love to read. My mom loves to read. My siblings, my aunts, we are readers. And so we would pass books through our family. I'm talking both sides of my family.
Yes.
And your books were the books like a few people would buy them and then we would just pass them through the family. Like, oh my goodness, I'll trade this book for this book, and we would read them. And this morning I got up and I was thinking about my mother. And so my mother loved your books. And she would read them. She would like, oh my gosh, have you read that new Curtis Black book? Oh my goodness. And she loved it. And, I was thinking, oh my gosh, she passed a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking, not only did she not get to see me become an author, but what amazing moment would she have been to see me here chatting with you. And so that was just, I don't know, for some reason that just made me think it was just one of those God sees me.
Yes. So, wow, I appreciate you sharing that. And I know that feeling. I lost my mom this November. It'll be 19 years. And as you know, it still feels like yesterday. When you lose your mom, there's nothing that can compare to that. And so, whenever I'm doing something that really gets me excited or makes me happy, or it's something that I think she might have been proud of, my first thought is how I wish she could be here. To witness it. So I know how you feel, but I mean, what a warm, story. It really warms my heart to hear you share that.
Yes. I just love it. So I am excited because you have a new book that came out this year. And I actually have it because I was pressed to get it. And it's funny, my aunt was like, well, I want to read it. And I was like, I'm just going to have to send you your own copy because but I have it here. It is The Woman God Created You to Be. And so for those, I know there are many people on our lives that are fans of your books. This is a little different than some of your other work. So why don't you talk a little bit about what this book is about and what was your inspiration to write it?
Wow. So very, very different journey. I have written 27 novels. So my entire writing career has centered around writing fictional stories. And never thought that I would do anything different than that, to be very honest. So it wasn't as though I had this big dream of writing a nonfiction book. I certainly didn't aspire to do it in any kind of way. And it was literally God laying it on my heart, and placing that in my mind, and then getting to a point where no matter how much I tried to push it completely out of my mind, it just wouldn't go away. And so that's sort of how I began the book, talking about, what happens, not just with me and my experience, but with anyone, any woman who might have a purpose, that God has assigned to their lives. And maybe they're afraid of it because they're afraid of the unknown. And maybe they just have other ideas about what their own purpose is. And so you spend this time, but when you wake up with it, and you go to bed with it, and you wake up with it, and you go to bed with it, and it never goes away. What I have been telling people, what I've learned more than anything about that process, is that God always gets what he wants, and he'll get it one way or the other.
Yeah, he will. I feel like sometimes he's talking to me like, okay, we can do this the easy way.
Yeah. Well, we can do it the other way, voluntarily or involuntarily.
Like, okay, Whit, you know how this works out. So
Yes.
so that is so true. And so I started reading your book, and there are so many different sections. You have it, and you tackle different areas. So just briefly chat about the different areas that you tackle in the book about how we can become the woman that God has created us to be.
So I have separated the book in 3 sections, the spiritual you, the personal you, and the professional you. And my reason for doing that is because I feel as though if you are going to be okay personally and professionally, you first need to make sure your spiritual life is intact. You need to make sure that your relationship with God is where it needs to be. And even if it's not where it needs to be, it needs to become your focus. And you need to work on improving in that area as possible, as much as you possibly can. And then once you feel that you've gotten things in order spiritually, then now it's time to work on yourself personally, the emotional aspects of your life, the mental health, the self-care that most of us don't make a priority, your physical body, learning how to forgive people that you may have held a grudge against for many, many years. So all of that. But you need to get that in order before you can begin working on your professional life and focusing on your purpose. And so I just believe that as women, and of course as men too, but for the sake of this conversation, that women need to work on becoming the woman God created them to be in every single area of their lives.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that sometimes us as women, we have trouble identifying, well, who am I supposed to be? Mm-hmm. I think we tend to associate our purpose with our titles. Mom, wife, teacher, whatever. How do we really get in tune with who God called us to be?
So I think that our purpose has been with us all along. I do believe that, from the day that we are born, and as in Jeremiah, as it says, when we're in our mother's womb, God knows who we're going to be. And so I even share now with women, even think back to your childhood, what you loved and what you would do naturally and what other people told you that you were good at. Because many times you were already on that path at a very, very young age. But for me, I've always known that writing was my purpose, that words and speaking, that had a lot to do with my purpose. I just never imagined that it would be much more about helping women become all that they could be based on my own mistakes as well as my accomplishments.
That's amazing. And I wanted to ask you a question. I know for us and just in society, we tend to have our timelines, right? Mm-hmm. We're supposed to do this by this age. And, and some of us, recognize that everyone has a unique path, but some of us really can become discouraged if we haven't hit those marks that we think we need to have by a certain age. How do you think that impairs us in our pursuit into being who God created us to be?
I think it impairs us because, of course, everything has to be done in God's timing. Whether you're talking about your purpose or anything else for that matter. And so we can become very impatient because most of us want what we want and we want it right now. And sometimes we don't even necessarily want to put all the hard work in that becomes necessary for us to get to where we need to be. And I've been very guilty of that on many occasions. And so I think it is a matter of going to that quiet place and spending that intimate time in prayer with God. And just first of all, asking him, what is it that you want me to do? What is it that you have for me to do that will help and serve others?
Absolutely. I think that we just, like you said, we get caught up, and you brought up an excellent point that sometimes it's not even that we don't know what to do, but it's that we're not willing to do the work. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was writing my first book and I was like talking about it and I just wasn't sure what to do. And I had a cousin that was just like, listen, just start writing.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, you've done all these other things, but you have to start writing. Like, just
it's easy to talk about it. And most of us can give great advice to other people, but we don't always take that advice ourselves. And so it was the same for me. I mean, I talked about this nonfiction book as soon as God laid it on my heart, and I knew that I was going to have to not end my fictional writing career, but to at least write that last book and then prepare to write this first nonfiction book. But I talked about it a lot. And so, with my husband, Will, and some of my close friends, it got to a point of, okay, you've talked about it. God has given you this to do. When are you going to actually sit down and make it happen? And so, as we know, faith without works is dead. And it is very, very, very true.
Absolutely. Talk to me a little bit about the process, because I think a lot of times we can sometimes romanticize this journey of becoming who God called us to be, when in actuality it's not always pretty.
Right.
So
right.
Let's talk about a little bit of the process.
So for me, and I pretty much handled this nonfiction book the same way that I've handled all of my novels. And so I'll start out with an idea, a topic. And so I'm not really writing anything at that point. But once I know what those general topics are, then that's when I'll create a 2 to 3 page synopsis, just sort of summarizing what the overall book will entail. And then from there, I outline every single chapter. So I will start out with 15 to 20 chapters, outline those, and then I'll go back and read that 1 or 2 page synopsis for chapter 1. And then I'll take that day and I'll write chapter 1. When I'm ready to write chapter 2, I'll go back and look at that 1 or 2 page synopsis for chapter 2. And then I'll write that entire chapter. And I'll continue doing that until I run out of outline chapters. And then from there, I will outline another 3 to 4, sometimes 5. And then I'll write those chapters. And then I'll do that 3 to 4 to 5 all the way to the very end of the book. So, of course, with the nonfiction book, it was a little bit different because I had chapter titles. And so I knew that I had to figure out which chapters would fall in the spiritual you category, which ones would fall in the personal you category, as well as the professional. So it was a little bit different, but in the end, it still was about outlining and then just writing the 1 chapter at a time.
That is amazing. That is amazing. And so what are some, without giving the book away, because we want you to go get the book, but what are some, just maybe 2 bits of advice that you share in the book that you can share to our listeners?
So one of my favorite chapters, and that is actually the very last chapter of the book, The Professional You, and it is about how you can be successful without jeopardizing your faith. And so I think it's so important as women of God, as Christian women, to know that you can be very successful, but you don't have to lie and cheat and steal and deceive and, step over other people. You don't have to do that. You can do it the right way without betraying someone else in the process. So I really enjoyed writing that one because I'm such a believer in doing the right thing, even if it means that I might miss out on something, but just being able to sleep at night and knowing that morally and I've done the right things and that my Christian values have come into play with all of my decision making. That makes all the difference. I have another chapter in the book that talks about mental health and, how so many women suffer in silence. We do think that we can do everything as women, and we take on the weight of the world, and we worry about not just ourselves, but every single one of our family members, sometimes our friends and our coworkers, and we really do think we can do it all. And so we totally forget about taking care of ourselves. And we have to begin to do better with that, because if we don't take care of ourselves, we won't be here to take care of anyone else in the first place. So,
absolutely. I definitely suffer in that category. I do well when, God says, it's time to move, like, get this done. But when he's like, I want you to sit still. Yeah. I don't know how to do that. So
yeah.
You are so right.
And that's it. And so even with this pandemic, I mean, this is the worst I'm sure that most of us have seen or experienced. Most of us never even imagined that we would experience what's going on today. But we still, to me, and in my opinion, we have to still look at the positive. We have to still keep our faith strong in God. We have to still move forward. We have to remember and know that this too shall pass, and to use this as an opportunity to reflect and refocus. And for people who don't know exactly what their purpose is, this is the time to really go into prayer so that you can discover it. And if you do know what your purpose is, this is the time to go ahead and do it afraid, even if you're afraid to step out there.
Yes, that is the word. It's just to do it afraid. Take the first step,
Yeah.
and God will reveal to you what that. It might just be saying yes. Sometimes the first step is just yes, God.
Yeah.
I'll do what you said.
Yeah.
But this is the time, like you said, this is an excellent time to just get started. Just start praying and asking God to show you. He will do it. He's already shown it to you. It's just that sometimes we don't have eyes to see it.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So how do you balance, and I know this is probably something you talk about as well in the book, is the balance of having your professional life and also having your personal life. If you're like me, sometimes they kind of all run, especially now working from home and being at home with my children. It just seems like everything rolls together. How do you establish that balance?
So you really have to decide what you're going to do and when. And so you've got to just figure out and schedule personal time. You've got to schedule out, in your case, time with your children. For me, it's scheduling time to spend with my husband. And then I have to figure out the time to get back to work, something that I've really struggled with a lot over these last couple of months, because it is so easy when you're at home to begin watching one episode of a show and the next second, and the next thing I know, Will and we are binge watching an entire season of something, and so now then I don't have my work done. So yeah, it is about balancing it. And even if you have to write down what you're going to do certain hours of the day, I think that would be the best way for you to get everything.
Absolutely. I think this is a big season too, especially now on prioritizing.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed since I've been home is, because I am working and have a business on top of that, is that I was not prioritizing things in a way that was pleasing to God. And that is why I was burning out. Mm-hmm. And it was very humbling for God to show me, this is what I need you to focus on. Yeah. These other things I told you I would take care of, and you are interfering.
Yeah.
And so how do you prioritize what you are going to do as far as your professional side?
So I had to really get to a place, because, once you are really working on your purpose, you're walking in your purpose. And of course, usually that coincides with your professional life. Then you can have 10 different ideas about what it is you want to do or you believe you need to do. And so I think you have to just stop and prioritize all of those ideas. And so, for example, for me, I was writing fiction, but I knew I had this nonfiction book in my heart to do. I know that I have the speaking engagements, that side of my career. And, there's a list of other things, that I know that I want to do. But I found myself focusing on all of them at one time and then not getting anything done at all. But when I decided that, okay, I'm going to finish writing the last novel of this last contract with my publisher, I'm going to take a break. Then I'm going to write the nonfiction book. Then I made a decision not to submit it to my publisher the way I had planned. I decided that I would self-publish it. So that was my next project that I was working on. And then, of course, now promoting it and trying to get the word out about the book and sharing it with women and moving on that way. So I just think that you have to decide to work on one thing at a time. And not everyone agrees with that. Some people believe that they kind of have to be, you say jack of all trades for women. I say Jill of all trades, but it is possible, I think, to get everything done, just not at the same time.
Absolutely. And if you want it done in excellence, it requires
a
level of care.
Yes.
It's hard to do when you're spread so thin.
And it is, because you can't be great at 10 different things. I think you can be good. You can be average and get everything done. But as you said, if you're looking to do things in an excellent way, you want to give that one particular thing 100% of your attention.
Amazing. So let me ask you this from the author perspective. So this is your first time self-publishing. So what was that like as opposed to having a traditional publisher?
Well, it's actually my second. So that's kind of the irony in all of this. I self-published my very first book, Behind Closed Doors. Yeah. So when I wrote Behind Closed Doors in 95, I went out seeking a literary agent and was rejected by every single one that I queried.
Wow.
And then I ended up submitting to editors at the major publishing houses, and once again was rejected by every one of them. And so then it was my mom who said, I don't think you should give up. And we passed around copies of your manuscript, and so many women have read it and said they enjoyed it. And then my husband, Will, said, why can't you just start your own company and publish the book yourself? And so that's how that whole idea came about. And then the book ended up taking off, and it was doing well enough that I went back to literary agents, and this time I found one that was willing to sign me on. And then she sold my second book and also the first book to publishers, to publishing houses. And so now fast forwarding to this one, there was never my plan to ever self-publish again. But again, this was just another part of my purpose. This is just what God gave me to do. And no matter how I wanted to submit it to someone else, that's just not something that he allowed me to do. And then that's when I realized that this too would be another part of my testimony. That would be an example to women that this is something that you can do, if God has it for you to accomplish.
Absolutely. And also, just as you were sharing, I just kept hearing that God will sometimes switch the plan up.
Mm-hmm.
He may switch the details up, but his promise is still the same.
And it is. So, but to still get back to your actual question, it's a little bit different because it's much more convenient now than it was in 96. So I was starting the business. We hired the printer. Those first 3,000 copies of the books were delivered to our home, and we stored them in our guest bedroom, and we were shipping them to bookstores and then eventually wholesalers, taking hundreds out to UPS so they could sell them to bookstores and libraries, and then, of course, the major chains. Now, with the print-on-demand systems, once you publish your book, you're still going through getting a developmental content editor. You're still getting your book edited. You're still getting a proofreader. You're hiring all those three people, then your cover designer, then your interior page designer. So you're still doing all of that. But once you sign on with Ingram Spark, then they will be able to print on demand books that are ordered by libraries and independent bookstores and retailers. And then, of course, Amazon for the Amazon.com copies.
Yeah, so it's things like you said have definitely changed. Yeah. So what is your advice for an author? And maybe, I'm an author, I'm a new author. I love it. I've always been a writer. I'm so thankful that God allowed me to do this. What is your advice for maybe someone that is similar to me, just starting out and just kind of figuring things out, or for that person that knows they have a book in them and they're just afraid to bring it out?
Right.
What would you say to them?
Right. Well, the first thing is, if they are wanting to write a book, if they've not written one already, it's a matter of, again, going into prayer and making sure that this is your passion and this is your purpose, that you are doing it, first of all, for the right reasons. Because if it's your purpose, God is going to equip you and give you everything you need to see that come to pass. You will be able to finish that book. But then the next thing is just to sit down, as you and I were talking at the very beginning, to sit down and do it. Even if you're just writing a paragraph or a page, try to write something every single day. And so that flow will continue. And so many times you will hear aspiring writers say, well, gosh, it just seems like it's going to take me forever. And, they're projecting months out and even years out. And so my example that I always give is that if you wrote one page every single day, you'd have 365 pages of a manuscript, which is about the average length of most manuscripts. And so whether you decide to write or not, that year is still going to pass us by. And so, you may as well be writing. If you've already written the book, social media is the best thing that could have ever happened for authors in terms of connecting with readers, one reader at a time, and book clubs, one book club at a time, and having opportunities like you've given me this evening to come on with you. And so, there are a number of ways that you can connect and just really get your book out to the masses.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I was just listening to you, and, you were saying that initially, you were dealing with the rejection and didn't, get signed on by the literary agent, didn't get published initially by, the major publishing houses. What was it in you that kept moving you forward and not just saying, you know what, maybe I'm not good enough? What helped you push past that?
You really do have to believe, because when I first received that batch of rejection letters from literary agents, I was really disappointed. And then I thought, well, okay, I know the editors at publishing houses, they really don't want to receive what they call unsolicited manuscripts. They really want you to have a literary agent. But since I couldn't find one, I thought, well, I didn't really have anything to lose. So I sent those letters, and in some cases, chapters of the book. But once again, I was rejected. And at that point, I really was discouraged, and I really was ready to give up. And I made the decision to give up, and I started applying to master's programs. I just decided, well, you know what, this is not going to work. So I made up my mind to go back to school. I was accepted to 2 of the programs, actually enrolled in one with the first class, and that was going to be it. But again, I had my mom and I had my husband, and I had close friends and my brothers who, didn't want to see me give up, and they just kept talking to me and encouraging me. And so, that sort of segues into, this whole idea of, definitely separate yourself from the naysayers. You're going to have people who will not support you, will not lift you up, will not encourage you to see your dreams come to pass. But, circle around you the people who are really going to root for you and tell you to keep going with it, because that really does make a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just so thankful that you're that you're here, and just some of your nuggets are just helping me. So I'm thankful for you being willing to share, because I think it's important for people to know that there's a process and there's a journey that has ebbs and flows, and not to just think it's all one way or all the other, but to be willing to embrace the entire journey for what it is.
And it is, and it can be different. And I say, of course, you believe in God. That's what I do, and I believe in myself. And then I believe in what I'm trying to accomplish, and in that order, so it really has to be about what God has given you to do. And then you have to remember that it's not what other people say or what they think about you, it's what God says about you. And then you have to always remember that you are not just good enough, but you are more than good enough.
Amen. Amen. And so how can our listeners get in contact with you if they want to order your books, if they want to talk to you about speaking engagements? How can they reach you?
Via my website, which is kimroby.com, KIMROBY. And then I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn.
Awesome. And so we will put those in the live stream at the conclusion of the show, so you can click right on all of those things. Please reach out. Please grab this book, her latest book, The Woman God Created You to Be. It is amazing. I have been reading it. I actually had to slow myself down, because this is the type of book where you need to kind of, in my opinion, stop and reflect and maybe write some notes. Mm-hmm. And so I had to, I was reading through it really quickly, and I'm like, nope. You need to absorb some of this so that you can actually put it into practice. So it's an amazing book. I am so honored that you joined me today. And my prayer for you is that God will continue to pour into you as you pour out for so many. And I pray that He overwhelms you with just provision and opportunity, and that He just opens doors that you didn't even know were there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
And you are a blessing to many. I just want to thank you again, author Kimberla Lawson. Roby, my favorite author. I am so excited. I cannot wait to send this to my Aunt Barbara after we're done so she can watch it. But I just want to thank you for your work has been a blessing to my family and to many all over the world. So just thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I want to send a special shout out to my son, Quincy, who's the producer. Thanks for doing an awesome job. To my Awesome God Radio family, I thank you for everything. I'm just humbled today. God has really done an amazing work in my life, and this week has been amazing. And so I'm just humbled, and I'm just so thankful to God. To everyone that is listening and tuning in, I pray that you have had a blessed show. I pray that I see you next Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In closing, she thinks, she feels, she hurts, she cries. She prays, she trusts, she fasts, she overcomes, and ultimately she heals. This is the She Heals Radio Show with your host, Whitney J. Take care. God bless. We will see you back here next Friday.